Hey, Thomas and Mel and John, and how you guys doing? Checking the sound and video, everything working okay? Oh, great, thanks, John. Hi, Mark, how's it going? Okay, hey, Watch Monkey, how you doing? Hey, Brian, good to see you. Well, listen, hi, Owen. How are things in Ireland, the Emerald Isle? Tricky question. But I'm sure he has something in mind. How about the Cartier Pasha? Gerald Genta design seemed to be a trend release and doesn't appear anymore. Hey, Michael, you know, um, this is what I was thinking more on a personal basis. I know that trends will go in sort of what I'll call herd trends. But what I'm really talking about is your own personal preferences, things that say, "Oh boy, I'd really like to have that watch," and then at some point it just like, yeah, not really. Hey, Eric. Um, I love the Cartier uh, Balloon Blue. Nothing but rain here. We've been having a lot of that too. Boy, I tell you, the guys out on the West Coast, out in California, Oregon, and Washington, they've been getting soaked also. Hi, Chili Badger. How you doing? 35 centimeters of snow. Okay. That sounds like a lot. Sounds like something that would happen in a place like Sweden. Um, yeah, we've been, I tell you, we must be getting the upside of, of global warming because we've had very temperate weather. We've had very little snow, and usually New England, even where we are, gets tons of it, but not this year. A Grand Seiko and backed out, listed after it all year, so was tripping over my lip on the way home. Hey, Floodland. Hi, JJ. Um, yeah, I was thinking of watches that there are a number of things that sort of I don't want to say ruined, but made lesser for me. One of the things has been these kind of watches where that we had made our own bespoke watch. So when we got together and had the Larique watch made, we were able to talk about, well, we wanted this, we wanted this. We got to know everything. I mean, we got to know the case maker. We learned about the problems that there was in case making. I mean, really good case making that Voutier and Caton had in the dial and the hands and the movement. I mean, everything like that. And then you sort of look at these other things that were done, sort of like in a big factory. And like I said, it sort of ruined it. Certain things, not everything, though. Uh, Let me sort of start off with certain things that I just wanted in the worst way, and now I sort of look at and say, nah, not so much. One watch I liked a great deal, and sort of still do, is the brigade tradition. And the brigade tradition to me was sort of look like, someone was, overlooking Abraham uh, Louis Breguet's shoulder and say, "Oh, I'm going to make a watch like that." I like that a lot. And in the watches, you can see all the parts and everything. But then they put silicon in it, and I thought the silicon hairsprings. I thought, what did they do that for? I mean, it's like, you know, why not put a quartz watch in there? So that, and the same thing with Patek Philippe. I love Patek Philippe. I still do. But yeah, look at their new watches, and they just don't do anything for me. No, that's me, and not everybody. I mean, some people could care less whether they have silicon hairsprings or not, and there's tons of advantage that I'm very much aware of. But anyway, that was sort of like the kinds of things that I've come to more appreciate would be some of the ones by Daniel Roth, by uh, Roger Dubuis, other ones like that, Vincent Calabrese, and some of the ones that the independents have. The problem with most independents, I can't afford them. I mean, they're really, really, really very expensive. Another one that I still like, but I'm not really anxious about getting, has to do with something that's very different. And this is Lang and Heim. Ever since Lang left, I just haven't been interested in Lang and Heinz, but I go back and I look at those watches and I know they were designed by Marco Lang. I go, wow, I'd really like to have one of those watches. But then I'm seeing sort of it being shipped away. A friend of mine who was really into Allanga Unsund, he after after Richemont took over, he just said they lost some of their edge to them. And I was thinking, gee, that's I can understand that. Ironically, one of my favorite brands was Parmigiani. Now I still like the Parmigianis, especially the ones that I have, but when they came through and sort of did they were redoing them and they've been selling much better because the designs are much more, I guess I'll say, palpable with the average watch buyer. They're still great watches, but um, you take watches like the old Valley pantograph with those hands that went in and out, things like that. They quit doing that, and that's sort of too bad about that. Hey, Tourbillon, how you doing? What were the watches you wanted to have but are glad you didn't pull the plug on? You mean pull the trigger on? I don't know. Um, it's a good question. The Tissot telemeter seemed super until I discovered that Longines used to do the same face style. That's something interesting, John. Sometimes nothing changes except when you find out something about sort of behind the scenes in the watch and it's just not the same anymore. I probably feel that way about Lang and Heim. I mean, if Marco Lang's not making them, what do I care? They, I could, it's not the same. Hi, Dominic. How you doing? Lone Jeans was higher end 50 to 70 years ago, direct competition to Rolex back then. Eric, yeah, they were. And the one I have that I got not too long ago, I forgot they got some big name for it. This is my what's it called? Oh, God, I forgot the name of it again. The Equation of Time. My Equation of Time. Love that watch. But that thing was designed back in 1989, and that's like what? God, it's going on 40 years ago. In fact, it may be 40 years ago. And but that watch is just really cool. Panerai. There, I said it. Clyde, that's another one too. A lot of things spoiled Panerai. The 318 to begin with. I've always liked the design of Panerai. But after that, and a number of things that I just never really trusted them. Same thing with IWC. I mean, the Portugueser was something, boy, I thought I'd really like to have, but then the trouble that used to bother me, or still bothers me about IWC, they'll have basically an ETA in there, an ETA base, and they won't say anything about it. They won't tell you about it, and then they'll sort of make it sound like it's one of theirs. Breitling does the same thing, and I just don't trust them. And if I don't trust them, why would I want something I don't trust? It's sort of weird that way. Uh, Wang and Hein. Hey, Brian. Cartier Pasha. I was really, but couldn't find one for a fair price. Other than the Gerald Genta design, I had no other reason why it was so hot. I was happy I couldn't find it. Sometimes that happens, Brian. I've had watches like that too. Oh boy, I'd really like that, but then I can't afford it. And then when I can, I look at it closely. Well, maybe I don't want it after all. Eric, I actually understand luxury brands have moved to silicone hairsprings. Well, Eric, three companies have, and they're big ones too. One is Patek Philippe, two is Swatch, and three is interesting, is not Rolex. Rolex was one of the three companies that went in and they developed the silicone hairspring that was no small feat, and but then decided to keep the parachrome hairspring in the Rolex watches. By and large, um, I don't know. I mean, like if I were interested in another hobby, for example, um, not watches, I probably wouldn't care what they put in it. But this is when you're looking at mechanical devices, one of the things that's interesting about it was developing something out of the same materials that basically uh, uh, John Harrison and Abraham Brigade dealt with. There's the you take for example, Rolex developed a hairspring that was stand the magnetization, and a lot of other things. They use niobium and chromium plus some other secret sauce in their hairspring, and it works fine. It keeps away the magnetization, and which is sort of interesting because the Milgauss had the anti-magnetic cage around it, as so did too. Another piece had the what's it called? The Air King had one too, and then they changed it. I don't know why. Okay, what else you guys have here? Hi, Nitha. My grill is the MB&F Legacy machine. I probably won't see it in real life. Yeah, yeah, I like the Legacy machine too. But what about watches that you used to like, and you just say, yeah, they don't do anything for you anymore? One of the things that I found, I had some. Oh, I really liked for a while. It was one of my own watches. It was called the 1972 Vacheron Constantin. 1972 wasn't the year that they made it, but rather it was to celebrate the year that they won the Prestige de France. And so I had that for years with the sort of the funky tetrahedron or something like that shape. I really liked that a lot. But after a while, I realized I wasn't wearing it anymore, or I wasn't wearing my little Rolex. I mean, not Rolex, but Patek Philippe Calatrava anymore. So I sold it, and I looked at it, and yeah, it's just not, it just doesn't do anything for me. Um, U-boat watches don't tickle my fancy. If there's plenty of folks liking them, yeah. Now there's always been watches that other people have liked that I've never really warmed up to. And but ones that I used to like that I just not quite into anymore. Zenith is one. I was a big Zenith fan for quite a while, but I think the thing with Zenith that I didn't like is the fact that they kept increasing the frequency, their frequency. They went up, going up to 5 frequency and see if they could do better than that. Um, Certain things, now I think everyone has the idiosyncrasies on these kinds of things, and that's what makes watch collection interesting. Something that I used to like, I don't like anymore. Other people may have just discovered and are very happy with them. They go out and get them and they love them. So, none of us can say that it, unless we're dealing with, sort of a herd trends going one way or the other. I suppose one herd trend, if you want to call it that, were bigger and bigger dials. I like around between 38 and maybe 41, 42, but I don't really think about it that much. But I really just don't like the smaller ones because I won't wear them. That was like cars that you can't check transmission fluid. Yes, Dominic, great example. Great example. For years, I always drove a stick shift. I had a stick shift Mercedes for years that I drove, and I love stick shifts. And there's a difference between a stick shift and automatics, and I just always owned a stick shift and always drove them. I think with a couple exceptions, but I had a '51 Chevy with oh, those kinds of things. Same thing with a watch. You have a when companies you take um, H. Moser, uh, Rolex, they went out and they developed a hairspring that was dealt fine with the magnetization. So you have things like that, and I think that's, well, why didn't they do that? In fact, there are a lot of the top-notch luxury watches like Boutin and like MB&F that they simply go and they use Straussman hairsprings from H. Moser, but since the hairsprings are the hardest things to do, instead of simply saying, why don't we do what Straussman did, or why don't we do what I mean, what it's actually called precision engineering. That's owned by H. Moser. Why don't we do that? Well, we'll get one out of silicon and all kinds of advantages. There are all kinds of advantages to quartz, for that matter. This is, to me, in a way, it's almost endangering their own overpriced uh, amounts that they ask for their watches. Now, especially more recently. Hey, Nathan, Legacy Machine 101. Yeah, those are very nice. Omega due to uh, limited editions. Yeah. Um, Usually when you have, to me, a limited edition, ours was limited to, I think, 70. I think was the final number that we had on this. And that's it. It's going to be 70. But one of the reasons that it was limited, everything was handmade. I mean, the, we had a lot of problems that they had with, especially because they had such a unique case. They had the polishing problem. A couple of us, I think they had to hand polish them in a way that they normally wouldn't, and so they had to get all of this new equipment to deal with the kind of design that we had. But see, if you have a watch and you have that kind of, I'll call it intimate familiarity with, it means so much more than, going down and getting something off the shelf. And it's a funny kind of thing. And I'm not saying it's for everybody. I'm certainly not saying that. And I have some fabulous watches that that's not the case with my Robinegg blue Kalpa extra large big grande thing. I love that thing. And that was canceled, but I like it. Another watch that I really like, I keep wondering why I like it so much. Then I discover why I like it is this is an older H. Moser Henry Hair Henry double hairspring was never popular. It was never popular when they had it. And when I got mine, they had just they had discontinued having. They were going to have it inside of the, what are they called? Wasn't the Alpine, but something else that it was sort of like after the Apple Watch shape that H. Moser had. And they're going to put in a double hairspring. Then they decided to just have a few. But so I wrote them, and the guy said, "Look, those things are just too expensive." And there was an article I read, and they were more complex than making a tourbillon. And I well, and plus the fact that nobody really cared about them except a few a few people like me. So you have watches like that you like because of some idiosyncrasy or some really cool some kind of constant force that they put in it. Uh, Rolex Day Date was the watch I'm glad I didn't buy. I'm ecstatic with what I purchased instead. Yeah, well, you get an FP Journe. You know something? That's another thing that's really funny. FP Journe, Chronomet Surveying, basic, solid watch. Love that watch, no matter what. I mean, and it's not like I have to, but rather instead it loves to get magnetized, I think, magnetized, and there's all kinds of problems with that and other kinds of things that make it a challenge. But I like it anyway, and it's sort of certain visceral thing. Somebody can you take the crummiest watch you can imagine, they just love it, and so what? That's a good thing. I think we all ought to, like it. Just sort of like is sort of like picking up sort of some orphan watch. Those are my favorite, by the way. Well, what else you got? Hi, Matt, the one and only. I think the obvious answer would be Frank Mueller. Obvious? Okay. Hey, John, Seiko used to love them, but they're misaligned hands to index. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. Hairsprings are part of the fine tuning. They are. To me, also too, they represent so few watch companies make their own hairsprings. Bovet does, of course, Parmigiani does. Part of the vertical uh, setup they have. The Vaucher makes the movement, but Vaucher gets its hairsprings from Otto Culpa, which is also owned by the Sandoz Family Foundation that owns all of these other things. But the are like in our watch, they had to make a special hairspring for us because they had what's it's called Agon pit. The system that they had for regulation, and you unscrew a couple screws and you push it one way or the other, and you tighten the screws up again. Then you check it on the time grapher, and then you adjust it until it's just right. But then you have a couple other screws, and you do the same thing with the beat. And so hit in, but they can't. They couldn't just put a regular hairspring on it. They had to have one specially made. And so it's like, there are not a lot of watches that have the Agon pit system on it, nor the Agony's teeth with those springs in it. I mean, those are fun to have. Those are lots of fun to have, and not because it's sort of like not because there's so few of them, but because we know them. You get to know them in a way that you don't know in a watch you go down, you pick up. Most of my watches are that way. Some of them are that way, and I still like them, but I couldn't tell you anything about the history of the sources of the gears or any of that stuff. Whereas with the Etude number one, I know all of that. Hi, O'Neill. Uh, Michael, I used to enjoy following the New Revolution collaborators. Then they just introduced the Bell and Ross Alan Silberstein collaboration. Now I have lost complete interest. Yeah, things like that happen. They really do. Um, O'Neill, Hamilton Cocky. See, that's a watch. I don't know if I'd ever get a Hamilton Khaki, but I like them. And same thing with oh god, the the Zenith Big Pilot Extra Special. Just because of that name, I like it. Truman. Thank you. That's it. Swiss Alps. That's the one I was trying to think of. The guy said, "Well, we're gonna have X number of Swiss Alps, and they're gonna have the double hairspring." I mean, I think they made a few of them, but not too many. The thing was that it's one of those things that works. Tourbillons had a problem of working because of all the different angles that you had with a wristwatch that you didn't necessarily have with a pocket watch. And on the other hand, the double hairspring worked with all of them because it worked like to me. I always like to use it when I don't know if you've ever flown a plane, a single engine plane. During takeoff, you got to hit the opposite rudder because you get a torque. I think it was yeah. We used to get torque pulling us to the left. On the other hand, when you had a double twin engine, you'd have the propellers going in opposite directions, so the torque would cancel each other out, sort of make them actually easier to fly in one respect. So the same thing with double hairsprings. You've got one going one way and one the other, and what happens is that uh, the positioning of the shaft on the balance wheel stays in one place. The other thing that does almost as much for that too is the brigade twist or whatever it's called on hairspring. So all kinds of things like that. That makes a watch sort of fun to know. Hey, Bernie, Mr. B, pen arrived for me because when I bought the 682 new, I discovered the mid case part just wasn't brushed between the lugs. Okay. That's another thing too. It doesn't matter what sets you off. In other words, whatever bugs you. There's no rule for that. Say, well, I don't like that because it's weird in some way that it's just weird to you, but nobody else. That's fine. Because if you have a watch and you're wearing it and you don't like it because some idiosyncrasy, so what? You don't like it. Maybe it's a favorite among somebody else. Rolex for me was always up there, especially after learning their history. But nowadays, it's just a show-off watch. I don't know. To me, the Rolex was, oh man, it's sort of a double. Poor Rolex, a double-edged sword. On the one hand, everyone knows what a Rolex is, but it's sort of like I noticed that at watch shows, some people were very this one guy was apologetic about it. I had on, I think, my residence watch, and the guy was, "Oh boy, this is FP's running residence." And I said, "What do you got?" He said, "Oh, I just have my Rolex." There's nothing wrong with Rolexes. I mean, there's the thing I don't like about Rolex. It's not Rolex. It's a lot of the owners that that talk about it like it's something miraculous, and it's not. It's a good watch, just sort of a good solid tool watch. I don't. I mean, it's like sort of the word imagination and Rolex somehow never collided for me. I'll put it that way. But I have nothing against them. I like the Air King, but that's super unpopular. Who knows why? And I like the Yachtmaster too because of the really interesting countdown mechanism they have for regattas. But Rolex owners, they don't like it. Who cares? Let's see. Any link between Sandoz family and Sandoz watches? I don't know that there could be. I don't know. I'll tell you an interesting connection with the Sandoz family. Something like back in 1753, um, Marianne Sandoz married Jacques Droz. Okay, that to me was interesting. Sandoz family has been around in Switzerland for years. Um, but I don't know if that's the same Sandoz family or not. Probably. I mean, it's sort of like they're Malin watches. I don't know whether or not they're related to Edouard Malin, who's the head of CEO, or not. It's a good question, though. Hacking generally means you can stop the second hand by pulling the crown. Yeah, it's also called a stop second. This is something else. I don't like stop seconds because they come whamming down on uh, the balance wheel. That's how they stop them. I mean, it's like pulling a stagecoach handle. But my favorite watches have that kind of stop second. My Langenheim have that. Urban Jurgensen and probably some other ones. But the ones that don't, this one doesn't. My FP Journes don't. Certain Rolexes didn't either because at one time the engineers of Rolex told the boss there, they said it's not good for the watch. But people wanted it. They wanted stop seconds so that they could precisely get the watch started by looking at their iPhone or whatever they used for that. Hi, Dark Star. Rolex watches all look alike. I think that's a lot of people feel that way. And I'll just, I mean, sort of they have a certain style. You're right. Hi, Snowban. Let's see. I was wondering whether it might have been the 1940s brought the jumbo radial dial Omega for early 1940 runs to 3012. I'm not sure. Hack stops the time when the crown is pulled out. Yeah. It would be watches without some complication. I agree. I like some complication. It doesn't have to have a lot. S the this one, I think has got a lot, but that's I'm probably not the most objective person about that. The one I like the best on the FP Journe Chronomet Surveying is simply the double hairspring, the double, mainspring in the double barrels in parallel. That I really like. Hi, John O'Dowie. What do you think of Baume at Mercier Baumatic in-house movement and 5-day power reserve? I think the isn't the Baumatic made by Val Fleurier? I may be wrong about that. Um, I like the fact Baume Mercier is always been. I don't know if I have one or not, but it's never. They have they're a watch that have some great style, some great designs to them, but I've never been impressed with them as a watch company that really do a lot with movements. And I think the Baumatic is really their first one. Whether it was a Val Fleury said, "Okay, you better start putting this in your watch." This was a Richemont thing. We want you to have your own movement, or they came up with it and were, in part one of the reasons that Bowman and Mercier and a lot of these other ones that we really like. The only reason they survived was because companies like Richemont or Swatch took them over. They weren't surviving, in other words. And this isn't just post quartz crisis. A lot of them would be dead if after the quartz crisis. I wear Rolex Explorer like I wear any other watch, and I like it, and that's all that matters. That's yeah, Brian, I feel the same way about it. Somebody's got a watch they like. The thing I like about Rolex is they're great everyday watches. They're reliable. They're well made. There are a whole lot of things I like about them. But it's just they're the things I like about other watches. I was wearing it's getting cold here. Well, not terribly cold or wet. I mean, for January in New England, it's been very mild. But I like wearing this one in case it rains. This is a Roger Dubuis Easy Diver, uh, and it's a great watch for sort of rough and tumble stuff. You can go out and play in a mud puddle in this and not have to worry about it. And it has a gold rotor and it has a Geneva seal, all of these things, and it looks like just a, something a sandbox kind of watch. Hey, Forbin, if stop seconds slam parts, how about back hacking? Hold a second. I don't do that either, Forbin. That gives me the heebie-jeebies. That just I don't know. Like I I've got to if I want, some kind of let's synchronize our watches when we go over the top, I'll use my iPhone. That these watches, I'll stick them on the time grapher, and especially the ones that the ones I make myself, and I can go in there with a toothpick or something and change the frequency either faster or slower. I love doing that, and then put it on a time grapher and see if it's any better. For the most part, though, I'll use my every morning. When I use, I'll look at my iPhone and put it together, and that's how I set them. But I mean, all of this kind of thing. Well, I want this kind of precision. Precision, I think, is important insofar as it reflects the quality of the work that's been done, and I like that. That was why when I got this one, I had it for about a week, but I didn't want to wear it very much because I was going to have it sent in, have it sent through a chronometer testing. All right. So I sent it in for chronometer testing through the Horological Society of New York, came back, passed it. And that was great. Now, after time, this watch, any mechanical watch is going to have certain fluctuations. My my FP Jour Chronometer Serene delights in doing that, but it's from 2007. It's getting a little long in the tooth. But I'll send it in and have them, fix it up, and then they send it back, and it's perfect. That works fine for me. Um, Does Etude number one have hacking second? Absolutely not, and I'm glad of it. Looking into vintage Omegas from the 50s to early second sub-seconds. Jacques Droz is owned by this watch group these days. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these things don't have a great deal to do with the original watchmaker. If you get a watch by, let's say, Laurent Ferrier, you're getting a watch that's done by the watchmaker. I mean, he is there for it. Same thing with Harboring 2. Same thing with FP Journe. FP Journe was telling people, you better get one of my watches now because I may die any day. It was really like, maybe cirrhosis of the liver, but I don't think he's ready for the grave quite yet. But it was like, here you can't get an FP Journe without being on a waiting list. So I don't know what the hurry, what's the rush. I would also say chronographs. I really don't get the point. I'm the same way about chronographs. I was never really into them. Uh, and if I were, I would, I have a couple. Well, yeah, two, I guess, and they're not bad. I never use the chronograph functions. They sort of crowd the. Hi, O'Neill, Grand Seiko, please slow down or stop new releases before it can absorb the last one. Oh, that's an interesting point. You like smaller size watches. I have a range of watches. I don't like the real small ones. You get down to around 34 or less than that. They're getting a little small for me. If Etude wears a transparent case cover to see its private parts, is it a rude Etude? Oh man, Forbin, Jesus. Oh, let's see what you got here. Uh-oh. Okay, I got my frying pan time from it's time for me to go. Anyway, yeah, I just thought it would be sort of I was noticing that some watches I used to really, when I go looking for watches, there are certain sort of categories I look for. I realized I wasn't looking at those anymore, but I was looking at different ones. So anyhow, okay, guys. Well, listen. Thanks for coming by and putting up with me today. I sort of went over. Didn't mean to go over, but have a great week and see you next week.